Initial patents in the 1970s coming out of Monsanto, they actually bought the chemical patent from a Japanese researcher who had found or formed this man-made chemical back in 1959. And with those initial patents, they showed us the mechanism of action, which is to disrupt an important enzyme pathway in bacteria, fungi, and plants. And it was argued that it must be safe for humans because we don't have that enzyme pathway that was supposed to be the primary mechanism of action of this chemical. What we then kind of failed to dig deeper on, perhaps as regulatory agencies or as farmers or consumers, was what does that enzyme pathway do indirectly for humans? And it turns out that enzyme pathway produces the critical amino acids and contributes to the medicinal quality of our food. We call them the essential amino acids because we can't make them. And so we rely on our food to deliver those via the bacteria, the fungi, and the plants themselves to get these building blocks for proteins into our body. And you can imagine this a little bit like the alphabet. You've got 26 letters and you can build hundreds of thousands of words from those. Similarly, we build the 230,000 proteins in the human body can be made from these, scant 20-some amino acids. However, if you suddenly block that food chain from producing those building blocks, you end up with missing vowels, these critical essentials for spelling the words correctly. And when you delete a couple vowels, you can imagine how many words you misspell. And that's one of our concerns, is that as we delete out these critical building blocks, we start to, even in utero, build bodies that are misspelling proteins, which leads to misfolded proteins, and that means the enzymes that would be coming out of that protein structure may be dysfunctional or not at their optimal rate of capacity for repair or detoxification, whatnot. But maybe more insidiously, you end up really building the whole scaffolding of the body with a weakened system. Then you go beyond that now, and the last decade has been this explosion of data around the microbiome. And this microbiome catch term has really, infiltrated everything from peer-reviewed journals of any sort to your typical journal at the side of your grocery store checkout line. And this microbiome is poorly understood by both consumers and physicians at this point, but it's supposed to describe bacteria, fungi, parasites, viruses in this extraordinary ecosystem that is in a cooperative relationship to build the foundation of life. And that microbiome is under attack from an antibiotic world. And bizarrely, while glyphosate and ultimately Roundup became known as weed killers, it was never patented as such. These chemicals were patented instead as antibiotics. And so now we look back over the last 40 years and realize we've been pouring antibiotics into our soils and water systems for the last 40 years at an ever-increasing rate. We doubled the amount of Roundup sprayed over global soils about every 6 years since 1976. The steepest climb in that was really around 1996 to 2006. In that 10 years, with the advent of GMO Roundup-ready crops, we no longer had to spot spray weeds, and we could spray the entire Midwest with a single chemical that would wipe out the microbiome of the soils, which of course is what delivers the nutrients and the medicines that would become your food-based, medicinal complex. And so now, over the last 20 years, we see the advent of the chronic disease epidemics in our children. If you start at the A's, you're looking at autism, attention deficit, allergies, asthma, and then in the adult population, you're seeing the explosion of anxiety disorders all the way to Alzheimer's dementia.